Good evening, X Winterview back again with a brief dialogue for his dear friend Annastacey. As usual, driving along in his car, recording sounds of car in the background. Apologies for the artifacts on the track. This brief dialogue is on, I've forgotten the topic. Great. Making your life work. That's the topic. Making your life work. Following on, I suppose, not quite a sequel from my earlier talk on happiness. How does one make their life work? Do we have any control? Interesting question. I'm aware at the moment that I'm sitting in a car, driving along quite a high speed. The hands are on the wheel, the eyes locked on the road ahead. Micro turns, micro adjustments to correct the steering. Braking occasionally to slow down at a traffic light and then resuming, and so on. Driving, as we call it. But, am I driving? Is there someone in control? Am I making my life work? Well, I'm not crashing the car, I'm keeping it on the road. So in that sense, I'm making my life work. Or am I? The idea is compelling. It's runs a lot of businesses in the world. The dream or the belief that you can improve or change your life with some kind of effort or endeavor. If we remove this person that we think we are, take them out of the equation completely, and just focus on this thing we call the body. We're not sure if there is such a thing as the body or a body, so in some ways to talk about the body is conceptual. But the concept of the body as a biological entity, you might say, seems to have needs and wants as well. The needs seem to be survival or oriented to survival. Food, shelter, water, oxygen, and there's social needs, belonging, community, partnering, mating, etc., etc. And the body seems to long for these things or crave them if they're missing, sending you signals that it's unhappy. If you are without air, the signals come pretty strong, pretty fast, pretty intensely. If you're without food, the signals are less intense than the ones for lack of oxygen, but nonetheless, there are signals coming through. Hunger pangs, of course, grumbling stomach, salivation, thinking about food all the time. The body seems to know what it wants, and has ways of letting you know that it wants it. And so these things that the body wants, in most situations, if we think about it, we don't really tell the body to signal us. The signals just arrive from somewhere. We might have a vague idea that it's going to be lunchtime soon, and we might want to think about that, or we might even think to bring food on our journey if we're on a journey, or go near some food at around the lunch hour. But is that us, or is that the body sending thoughts into consciousness and then acting them out? It's hard to say how it really works. The body seems to have an intelligence of its own. It seems to know what it wants and when it wants it, once again, to recap that. Is that making my life work, though? Is that the same thing? It seems that I'm not really doing that. That's something that the body does very well. What do I do then, if I believe in this conceptual self, this person that I am? What am I doing to direct that body? It seems that aside from the basic survival needs of the body, there are more, you could say, human pursuits that are seemingly unrelated to the body. Seemingly. Like the idea of spiritual union, the idea that perhaps I have to go to church on Sunday and pray for forgiveness. Is that what the body wants? Is there a longing in the body to go and pray in a church or a temple on a Sunday because it feels it needs to? It's hard to say, isn't it? There's images of what might happen if we don't go, perhaps some discomfort felt in the body. So maybe the body is directing those. Which part am I playing? What part am I doing in the going to church? Or what if I wanted to read a series of books, the Harry Potter series? There's a whole stack of Harry Potter books. I don't think the body needs to read Harry Potter. I'm pretty confident that that was not covered in my basic biology at school, but yet sometimes I find myself looking for large serialized books, or whatever you call them, books with sequels, to read, to keep myself occupied. Some sort of enjoyment or entertainment. Is that for the body, or is that me doing that? You see, it's funny because the book is in the hands and I'm seated and the eyes are reading the pages, so there's seemingly a bodily component, but it feels like the pleasure or the joy of that is for me. It's not for the body, it's for someone else. The person in the body. The body has no interest in the prisoner of Azkaban, does it? And so we come to a conundrum here. The body's needs seem finite somehow, yet the needs of the person are falling into the realm of the infinite. There's so many things that I could do with my life. We often hear as children, or from well-meaning parents, that you can do anything you want with your life. It's a wonderful story or a dream or a narrative, and who's to say if it's not true? But we are kind of discussing it now. This is the essence of making my life work. The dreams of making one's life work, at least in childhood, are often somewhat fantastical, maybe grandiose, maybe a bit fantasy-like in some ways. Very often we hear children expressing dreams and desires to be exciting professions, or to live lives that make a huge difference to mankind, to change the course of history somehow, to become famous, to become a explorer or a researcher, actor, artist, and so on. These dreams are very compelling. And of course, it seems that the body needs to come along for the ride. But do these dreams have anything to do with the body? Seemingly not. Seemingly that these dreams are for the person who we believe inhabits the body. That I'm going to make my life work, so I need to keep my body healthy so I can do it, is the thinking. Perhaps if we're oriented to sporting success, going to be a famous sports person or athlete of some kind, we need to keep the body fit and fast and strong, and so on. It serves a purpose greater than the body for this person who exists inside or as the body, so the thinking goes. But the question still remains, am I doing that? Am I making my life work? It seems when I look down to the level of thought, there's not much in the way of generating thought. It just seems to arise quite spontaneously. Sometimes there seems to be a direct trigger to my thoughts. For example, a dog could run across the road in front of me, and I might swerve to miss the dog, and suddenly I'm filled with, oh my god, I almost killed that dog. Maybe annoyance or fear or whatever. Suddenly there's lots of thoughts, so there could be a trigger seemingly in the environment. But other times when I'm quiet, I just sort of sit there peacefully, perhaps driving, staring ahead. Thoughts just pop in and out of awareness. I'm not generating those thoughts, they just arise naturally. And the same with the emotional feelings and physical sensations in the body. They just happen, often in response to thoughts, sometimes just out of the blue on their own. And then, of course, going back to my earlier statement about the body's needs, those sensations and thoughts pop in too. Hungry, thirsty, got to go to the bathroom, and so on and so forth. It doesn't really seem that I'm doing that. It seems somehow that I must be there somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where I am. I seem to arise most clearly in the recounting of the story, perhaps at a future time, when someone asks me, how did you get from your home to the cinema today? I could tell them a story about how I got in my car and I drove up to the cinema and I bought the tickets and all that, and it seems that in the telling of it, I appear suddenly. But in the moment, in the immediate moment, there didn't seem to be an I who had to somehow generate that story or that effort or that endeavor. It just happened of its own accord. And I'm still not sure what part the body plays in all this. Is it all for the body? Is it the body that just wants this stuff? Am I just tagging along this concept of I on the back of everything the body wants? It seems the more I talk and think about this, that most of what I do is for the body. The body, let's not forget, is an extremely sophisticated organism. This is a human body with a human brain. This brain is the most remarkable evolutionary development, you might argue, in the history of the world, if there was such a thing to believe in. It's an incredible brain. It's more sophisticated than any other brain in the world. And perhaps this brain, this biological entity, has complex needs beyond the simple survival needs of the body, complex needs for pleasure and meaning and purpose and so on and so forth. And perhaps this brain finds ways to communicate this through thought and feeling and gut instinct and all those sort of nebulous qualities that seem to impel or generate behavior. Is it nothing more than the needs of a biological organism, this so-called life? In the end, I can't really find a person somewhere there who's generating that life. It seems that the body is generating most of it itself. As I said earlier, there were occasional outside influences impacting, but the more I think about every facet of my life, I could argue that it's nothing more than body intelligence, body seeking its needs, whether it's intellectual needs, emotional needs, physical, etc., social, all that. Perhaps it's all for the body, all for the biological unit. That would seem to make the most sense. It would remove the phantom self, the I, the me from the party, this I that I seem to somehow need to generate, kind of gets in the way of the whole conceptualizing. It's somehow late to the party. I have to put an I in who wants all this stuff. I never gets hungry, the body gets hungry. Yet I'm very quick to claim I'm hungry. Even boredom too. You could even suggest that the nervous system gets restless or agitated in certain circumstances that we would call boredom, and it needs some kind of soothing. We know from psychological research there's a large body of work around the idea of individuals who are unable to regulate their emotional system unless they do a lot of sensation seeking, a lot of behaviors that sort of calm or soothe their nervous system. You could say that they're doing it, but when I put it in those terms it sounds more biological again. We know that conceptualizing the self as well always seems to include the body. There's an idea of the body at the center of the self-conceptualization. So it could be easier in some ways to discard this I. Just discard it from the equation and suggest that it's just the body-mind unit, so to speak, that has the wide variety of needs that it seems to know what to do and how to get them when it wants them. And of course it certainly knows how to have a little tantrum when it doesn't get them. So it knows what to do. Sometimes this has been conceptualized as karma. The body-mind has its own karma to play out in this field, in this world, in this life. That's an okay model. I'm not a big fan of the karmic model. It seems to conjure up a lot of cause and effect images, and I suspect I don't know much about the model of karma. I'm sure it's got a lot more wisdom than that. But the model itself, it's a nice idea, I suppose. So this body has wants and needs that some are predictable, some are a mystery, total mystery. We have preferences, we have conditioning, we have genetics, we have our learning from experience, we have our ability to fantasize and dream of the future. All can be explained through the biological entity. You don't need to add a person in there. The body seems to make its life work very well. Thank you very much. Anyway, that's enough of this brief dialogue. Just food for thought, perhaps. A way to relax the thinking around the whole endeavour of chomping at the bit and trying my best to make everything work. I can relax a bit in that knowledge, knowing that the body is very capable, knowing what it wants and how to get it when it wants it. This has been X Winterview with another brief dialogue. Thank you for listening. Comments are welcome.